Hi, I'm Tim Diamond. I've been a naturopathic doctor in San Francisco practicing for 17 years. I teach continuing education in herbal medicine to other naturopathic doctors. And in this class, I'll be teaching to acupuncturists about how to use Western traditional herbs. 50% of the focus of this class will be on safety of using herbs. And you'll learn about herbs such as this one, horse chestnut, which many people are now saying is deadly. So I'll teach you how to find out what the real safety concerns are with this herb, as well as 25 other herbs coming out of Europe. In part 2 of this class, I'll be focusing on other safety issues, as well as 25 herbs coming out of the Americas. So I hope you enjoy it. So I want to talk about good books on herbal medicine. And what I recommend is that you get a book that is a good clinical advisor, written by an author that has many decades of experience practicing herbalism. And so there are many books to choose from. Some are more academic and some are more clinical, written by someone with actual up-to-date experience. And one author to consider is David Hoffman. He's a classic British herbalist, now teaching in the United States, many decades of experience, very down-to-earth, practical, um, gives the very classic, standard Western herbal indications. His dosages tend to be quite high, and he gives personal experience as well as the experience of many other people. And then there's also Matthew Wood. Any books by Matthew Wood, I highly recommend. He's a very different style of Western herbalist. In his books, there'll be a lot more inclusion of psychological indications for herbs and spiritual indications. There's magical herbalism mixed in with using herbs in a more physical way. The dosages that Matthew prescribes are extremely small, usually 3 to 5 drops, whereas David Hoffman's doses are very, very large. He kind of represents a different side of that spectrum. And then there's a third author, Cheryl Tilgner, and in the book, in the notes, I quote from her earlier book, which is what I've been using up until now. I actually just got this book in the mail today. It's just hot off the press, and it looks really, really excellent. So while there are many books that give you good indications for using herbs, there really isn't good books on the safety of herbs. They'll all include a little bit of safety information. They'll describe an herb and say, not to be used during pregnancy, for example. But they don't really give you all of the up-to-date information. If I had to choose one book to use for safety, I would choose Cheryl Tilgner's book. It's up-to-date, and even in her previous book, it was more reliable in that sense, I found. So she does cover the subject very well, but again, it's in a book, and there really is today more up-to-date information and better ways to get that information. And I'm going to go over some of those different choices. The first of which is going to be Google searching. So I'm going to use the herb as an example, horse chestnut. And so we'll first start off searching on the internet. Okay, so let's do a Google search. So if I enter into the search box, horse chestnut safety, I get several things coming up on the first page. One of the first things that people look to often is WebMD. So let's look at what WebMD has to say about safety of horse chestnut. So in the overview, in the first paragraph, you see that horse chestnut contains significant amounts of a poison called esculin and can cause death if eaten raw. In the second paragraph, it says, be careful not to confuse it with these other plants which look similar. In case you're wildcrafting, one of them is actually another medicinal herb. You wouldn't want to confuse one for the other. But what about this poison called esculin? Is that a poison? And has it actually caused death? So I'm going to do a little search on that and do a search on esculin. There's a Wikipedia page for esculin, which shows that it is extracted in pure form and sometimes taken as a medicine for its vasoprotective effect, and it can cause death at high dose. But we're really talking about not pure esculin, we're talking about horse chestnut, which would contain some amount of esculin. What about death from horse chestnut? That gives me a lot of things. Um, and what seems to be most common is death of horse chestnut. And so, okay, horse chestnut died back in 2015, a very famous horse. And there's lots of video. And this turns out to really just be a big distraction. You know, it is kind of entertaining to watch for a little while. It's not exactly what I'm looking for. Here's this interesting article about how horse chestnuts were used as a famine food in the Netherlands during World War II. And it talks about people eating this as well as a lot of other things. They were starving at that time and had to eat. But it doesn't mention anything about people dying from this. So I begin to wonder, how much of a risk is that really? Okay, so back to WebMD. What we really want to see is the side effects. Is this going to be safe to consume? And right off the bat, they say that it is likely safe for most people when a standardized seed extract product is taken by mouth for a short period of time. Now, okay, right off the bat here, I have to explain a little bit about horse chestnut. One of the main uses for it is for venous insufficiency or varicose veins. And although the studies have been done just for a short amount of time with people, if you're trying to reverse varicose veins, I mean, whatever you're going to use is probably going to be kind of a long-term project. And it doesn't give us really any details about, how short of time or, what that risk is. So they give a little summary of it here, starting off by saying taking the raw seed, bark, flower, or leaf is unsafe and can lead to death. Okay, and the next sentence is, not enough is known about the safety of using horse chestnut seed extract from which the poisonous esculin has been removed during pregnancy or breastfeeding. So not enough is known about the safety of using. That's a statement you'll see a lot, and I'll get back to that. So where do they get this information? And if we go back to the overview, you can see that they do have a list of references here. And I just have to say this is a very long list of references. And some of these look actually quite impressive. Horse chestnut for venous insufficiency, and that's 1999. And it says view abstract, so it's suggesting we could just click right there and view the abstract, but this is actually not a link that can be viewed from here. It makes me think that this is just more of a cut and paste job, perhaps. But in any case, it is a very, very long and extensive list of references. You see here, change in the medical plant use in Estonian ethnomedicine, a historical comparison between 1888 and 1994. Okay, that sounds fascinating. One of the problems here is that none of these are actually linked to the facts that are stated in the article. So you can't really know where are these deaths. And I've looked through these articles and I just, maybe somebody else could find them in there. Maybe they're in there, but I don't see where it tells me how often people have died from taking horse chestnut. Going back to the general Google search, I've looked through a number of the things on here, and I just can't find anything that's really giving me the details that I would want to know. So, for example, if I did want to prescribe horse chestnut to a woman who was pregnant, I'm just not getting it from here. So if you want to find more scholarly articles, you'll need to go to PubMed, where you can get most peer-reviewed journal articles, and they do contain articles on herbal medicine. And you'll want to search out by the Latin name, Aesculus hippocastanum. And when you do that search, you find a lot of articles, 533 different articles. And this is just the lists of what articles are there. So maybe we narrow it down to safety. And that brings us 14 articles. And here we've got one, horse chestnut seed for chronic venous insufficiency. And I click on that and it gives me the abstract, which is just a quick summary of it. If you want to get the full article, there are websites which will get that. If you click the links from here, you'll be asked to pay probably about $40 for this article. But if you get the DOI number, and you get to a website called Hub, if you can find it, it keeps having to move around. Enter that number there. You can probably find the entire article for free. But this type of analysis can take a long time, and if you have a patient right there, you just simply want to know, she's pregnant, she's got varicose veins. I want to know, how safe is this going to be? If you want to get the best experts' opinions on the safety of herbs, I would suggest using the Botanical Safety Handbook. So here's a comparison that they do of a few different herbs, and you'll see horse chestnut right here on the left, and the safety class is 1, and the interactions class is A. And you'll see in the notes the breakdown of what these different numbers and letters mean, but basically horse chestnut gets the highest safety rating and is least likely to interact with other medications. So here's the panel of experts that is used in the Botanical Safety Handbook to decide on what these categories of safety are. And on this, you'll see they have 10 different experts. 3 of them are PhDs. They're all very, very high level in the field. So I just want to show you who a couple of these people are. Here you have one person who worked for the National Library of Medicine. He's a PhD, has been collecting herbal data with a focus on toxicology since the early 1970s. He's pretty impressive. He's someone that would know a lot about toxicology of herbal remedies. And then down at the bottom here, another PhD who is a professor of the medicinal plant program from University of Massachusetts. So along with some really high-level herbalists, I would say that these are the people that really would have a good opinion about the safety of herbs. So let's look at this in a little bit more detail. Horse chestnut gets that higher safety rating, and St. John's wort, which is an herb I love and I use a lot, doesn't get such a high safety rating. It's got some issues, and that'll be covered in the written notes as well. But let's go to horse chestnut. Here is the quick summary, this whole page here. There's a lot of information on it. So the take-home message is it's the highest safety class rating, which means it's safe to be used during pregnancy, and it's unlikely to interact with other medications. But in the details here, it does go over some issues. Mild adverse events were reported in clinical trials, and it gives those details right there, which is good to know. If you prescribe something and a patient starts having strange symptoms, you want to know if that's common with that herb. And then here's a really important statement I want to go over a little bit. Cases of kidney and liver damage have been reported in association with injections of purified extracts of horse chestnut. And it goes on to say, no such reactions have been reported or are expected with oral use of horse chestnut. So in other words, there's been no cases of organ damage or anyone dying from drinking horse chestnut tree, eating horse chestnuts, taking capsules of horse chestnuts. But what about that deadly toxin? What about the deaths that have been associated with it? Well, they're not to be found. They don't exist. And this is something that's really hard for people to understand. A plant can have a deadly toxin in it. There are many, many examples of this. For example, almonds can contain cyanide, yet we don't expect people to die of cyanide poisoning by consuming almonds. So should we have any concerns when prescribing horse chestnut in any form other than when injecting? I don't think so. So this goes on to give some details about pregnancy, and I want to show something else here. This says here, no adverse effects on fetal development were reported in several clinical trials using horse chestnut extract in pregnant women. So there's been several clinical trials of using horse chestnut during pregnancy, and there was no problem with them. Somehow all of this information gets left out of many of the reviews, such as WebMD, that you'll find on the internet. So at this point, sometimes I want to write a letter to WebMD and say, hey, hold on, you guys, you missed something. But I think it would fall on deaf ears. So this is the quick summary. And if you really want to geek out on this, you can scroll down and get the review details. And it's quite long, going over the studies in quite a bit of detail. And at the bottom, you'll find the literature cited. And as you would expect in a paper like this, all of the facts can be traced to the specific article, so they're cited properly. And it's a shorter list of articles, but it's more solid than what we were seeing in the WebMD article. Okay, so I highly recommend the Botanical Safety Handbook. The big drawback with it, though, is that it's not free. It's actually $119 a year to access it. So if you're just starting out, it might not be worth it. If you're only going to use the herbs that are used in this class, you may not need it, at least for a long time. And if you're using just Chinese herbs, you also may not need it because you may have these resources at your fingertips already. But if you're going to be getting into Western herbalism, I highly, highly recommend it. They go over 500 different medicinal herbs, and the online edition keeps itself up to date. But I have to say, most professional herbalists don't actually use it and will just rely upon what they've learned from their teachers or what is available in the books. And I think that mainly herbalists don't use it because of the price, but there's another reason too, which is that the Botanical Safety Handbook is a rather conservative take on herbal safety. I've heard herbalists criticize the Botanical Safety Handbook, saying that it's too conservative and rates herbs as unsafe when they are in fact safe. But in my opinion, I want to know what the worst case scenario is. I want to know what the biggest safety issues are before I prescribe to someone. So in any case, if you're not ready to invest in it right now, you may not need it, but I want you to know that it's there because it is the best available resource to scientifically go over what are the safety issues associated with each herb. Let's go back to that sentence that was for horse chestnut in WebMD, where it says, not enough is known about the safety of using horse chestnut. And this not enough is known about the safety of using statement is something that I've seen a lot. I want to show you something that I've noticed. So if I copy that statement and I go back to Google, and this time I'm going to take that statement and I'm going to put quotes around it so that I do a search on exactly that statement, those words in the same order, and I come up with 8,770 different results, which is not really surprising because, you could say not enough is known about the safety of using about a lot of things. It could be talking about pharmaceutical drugs or, different things that you might be doing. But as you search down these results, you'll see that it's primarily about herbs. That statement is used in regards to herbs. And I've searched this through page after page after page, and I'm finding the same sort of pattern. It's about rosemary, it's about oregano, ginkgo. Now I'm up to page 3 here, parsley, more oregano, MSM. Okay, that's not an herb, that's a supplement. Here's the first article about a pharmaceutical drug, which is about armor thyroid, which is interesting. That's a non-patentable pharmaceutical drug. So that one comes up. Then we've got shepherd's purse, boswellia. These are all different medicinal herbs. And, I find a few vitamins occasionally on this, but I've gone through page after page after page, and it just seems to be nothing but medicinal herbs, using that same sentence saying, not enough is known about the safety of using. And it's generally used to dissuade people from using something during pregnancy. And the statement is used over and over again, even when there's clinical trials where herbs are being used during pregnancy. So I've only gone up to page 10, and this is just my Google search, and I know everybody's Google search can be a little bit different, so other people may come up with different things, but it's in general seems to be about medicinal herbs. And some here we've got clove used in jello. Well, that could be possibly a concern, but mostly it's a way to dissuade people from using any kind of alternative medicine, natural medicine, herbal medicine, primarily herbal medicine.
Well, I hope that was interesting. As you can see, there are a lot of harsh warnings about herbs on the internet. Actually, if you go through all of the herbs for this class, all of the herbs that have the highest safety rating, the 1A rating, and you do a Google search on them, I tell you on the first page, you are going to see warnings about using them. And these warnings are really scaring people away from using herbal medicines. So for that reason, it's really important to be informed about the real safety concerns with herbs so that you can understand how to use them safely and which herbs can be used freely and without any concern at all. The warnings have become much more common in the last 3 years, in my opinion. When I first began my practice in 2001, my patients would look things up online all the time, and we would talk about what they found, and nobody was really concerned about side effects or warnings that they were reading. It was up to me to stay on top of all of that. Now, people come to me frequently and are reporting very scary things that they read about herbs online, and I always have to show them what the real safety information available is. And so for that reason, it's very important to be up to date and informed on that. In this class on the 25 herbs that I'm going over in the part B, that is going to give you more safety information than you will find in most courses on herbal medicine, any course that I've ever taken actually, and in any book that you'll find. So pay attention to that part of it. And keep it in mind that if you're prescribing for people, it is really important to stay on top of what that information is, not only so you can keep your patients safe, but also so that you can keep them informed so that they can feel safe when they use your prescriptions. So thanks for watching.
Yarrow, said to be the oldest of all of the herbal remedies used by Paleolithic humans and supposedly even used by Neanderthals. So I understand this to be a remedy to regulate blood flow and circulation. It stops hemorrhaging because it helps the body redirect the blood away from a cut or wound. It helps colds and flus because it opens up the periphery, gets a person sweating, and thus redirects the fluids away from the congestion around the bronchioles, lungs, or the glands in the throat, or if a person has too much blood flow into their head because of their fever, it redirects the circulation. So it's used as a herb in a lot of cold and flu remedies. Horse chestnut. This is most often used as a venous tonic, used for varicose veins and as a vein anti-inflammatory. It's had lots of research for use in that way and has a long history of use in that way as well. It's also used for when there's rapid thoughts or repetitive thoughts, and the herbalist Matthew Wood prescribes it based upon the pulse. When he feels the quick pulse, meaning there's not a sense of rest in between the beats, he'll give this remedy, as will I now, and it does really seem to relax a person's mind and kind of slow them down and get them in the moment. The third herb is agrimony. This herb is commonly used because it is both astringent and bitter. So this means it can be used as a bitter to stimulate the digestive process, but also as an astringent to reduce the amount of fluids being released in the digestive process. So it's really good if a person has diarrhea plus they need to stimulate their digestive system at the same time. Commonly used to treat childhood diarrhea. There's also a mental picture with agrimony, and that is for the person who is um, upset by quarrels or upset by arguments. And often the type of person that needs this the most is very cheerful and personable and likes harmony in situations, but they get upset if somebody yells at them, and then they'll carry it around for a long time. It's also used when a person is dealing with the stress of having someone in their life that is dominating or trying to control them or making them feel trapped. The fourth herb is Angelica archangelica, the archangel, and there is that similar herb used in Chinese medicine, Angelica sinensis or dongguai. And this one is a little bit different. This one is also very bitter, and it's used to stimulate the digestive process, used in a lot of bitter formulas for the digestive system. It's also used in a lot of cough formulas as an expectorant. And then the herbalist Matthew Wood has a lot to say about its traditional uses spiritually, and it has a lot of uses by Native Americans. It was said to be bear medicine, and it was to help a person get in touch with their spiritual side. It's used in sweat lodge ceremonies, and it's often prescribed now for a person who feels cut off spiritually in some ways, so they're looking for some kind of spiritual help or spiritual guidance, but they feel that they just cannot access it within themselves. Number 5 is wormwood. This herb is extremely bitter. If you've never tasted wormwood tincture, I highly recommend trying it at least once. There's nothing quite like it. I first learned this from an old school naturopathic doctor, a woman in Spokane, Washington, who would give it in single doses to essentially reboot the system and would flush out the liver and gallbladder and the intestines too, take it a single time, skip the next meal, and it would get rid of headaches and make a person feel kind of flushed out. It is used as a digestive bitter, and there's a huge variation in the amount of the dosage that people use. And some people feel that it is toxic, and I think that element has been sort of overplayed. But there is a kind of darkness about it. Famously, it's used in absinthe, and that was said to be a form of liquor that would bring out hallucinations or darkness in people. And it is also used to treat depression. I've treated depression with it many times, but I don't have people take it every day. I have them take it periodically. It seems to stir up darkness in a person and help them clear it out. And number 6, calendula. Completely different herb than wormwood. This is sunshine. This is also used to treat depression, but in a much, much different way. I think of this herb if a person has seasonal affective disorder and they just need more sun and brightness in their mind and in their life. It is used for chronic sinus infections, if there's like a plug in the sinuses, and then also if a person has a wound of any sort or a scrape in particular. It works very, very well for that. If there's a wound and it's either a fresh wound or it's old and it's got some pus on top of it, just start putting drops of calendula tincture on there. It works incredibly well. Number 7 is chelidonium, perhaps the archetypal gallbladder remedy of Western herbalism. It is known to be rather toxic and dangerous. It can be too forceful, and if a person has a backup of bile, it can force the system, which can backfire and create more of a backup and damaging the liver and pancreas. But I have seen it work beautifully. It is known to thin out the bile, helping the body release fresh, new, thin bile, which dissolves stones and flushes things out. Out of concerns of the toxicity, I actually now prefer to use it in homeopathic potency, and it works beautifully in these dosages. I will sometimes prescribe it as tincture, but only in very, very tiny amounts. Number 8 is hawthorn. Hawthorn is also used in Chinese medicine, but it is used for the stomach in Chinese medicine, used for digestion. In Western herbalism, it is primarily seen as a remedy for the heart. Western herbalists will use the flowers, the berries, and or the leaves. It is often used for aging populations for the heart before symptoms develop of any cardiac disease. It's been shown to lower blood pressure, but also help to raise blood pressure if a person's blood pressure has gotten too low. It does seem to be fine to use in combination with cardiac medications. There is also a lot of magic and myth surrounding this herb hawthorn. It is a druid herb, an herb of the hedgerow, which is something that one would pass through and enter the knowledge of the wilderness. Some herbalists prescribe it whenever there is an illness suggesting a spiritual imbalance. Number 9 is horsetail. This is a silica tonic, so it is an herb that helps build up that mineral, making the hair and fingernails stronger. It is also an herb that is used for the urinary system, in particular strengthening and tonifying the bladder, helping the mucosa of the bladder heal. It is used for recurrent urinary tract infections as well as childhood bedwetting. Fennel. So the whole plant is so delicious. You can eat the leaves and the roots, but it is the fruit of fennel that is used in herbal medicine, or what people commonly call the seed, and it is most often used to soothe the abdomen if a person's having spasms of the abdomen, or maybe they have irritable bowel syndrome. It's very soothing for that. It is also used as a galactagogue, meaning it helps women lactating. It helps with the production of milk. If you're using it for lactation, you want to be sure and use a simple water extract such as a tea and not the tincture, because the essential oils can be problematic during lactation. They will pass into the breast milk. Cleavers, said to be the best tonic for the lymphatic system. It also has qualities of being anti-lithic, meaning it softens hardened tissues, lithic meaning stone-like tissues. So it can break down urinary stones, but also tissues that just feel stony. It also is an alterative, which means it's a detoxifier. So it detoxifies through the lymphatic system. It is a cooling lymphatic remedy, whereas calendula is more warming. It's used for fibrocystic breast tissues and fibrotic nerves such as neurofibromas. Number 12 is St. John's wort. So it is most famously used now as an antidepressant, but if you go back in time 40 years, nobody was using it for that. It was widely used as a nerve anti-inflammatory, used for nerve pain or injuries to nerve-rich areas such as the fingertips or the tailbone. It also is used for head injuries or injuries to the brain. If you go back in time to the Middle Ages, it was at that time used as for when a person has a dark spiritual possession or a dark entity, and the description of it is very much like the treatment of depression. It has these beautiful yellow flowers, which when you press them, they'll stain your fingers red. So there's this red fluid that comes out, and a good St. John's wort extract will have this deep, rich red color to it. The leaves are also interesting. They have these tiny little vesicles in them, which allows light to pass through them. So that is one of the ways that is seen as like a metaphor, that it allows light to pass deeply into you. Interestingly, it also can have the side effect of photosensitivity, meaning a person can sunburn more easily when it is used, but that is rarely, rarely seen. What is commonly seen is that it can detoxify medications from your system more quickly. So a medication that you need to have up at a certain level may suddenly drop when a person starts taking St. John's wort. So number 13 is white horehound. This is a major cough remedy. It relaxes the smooth muscles of the bronchioles while promoting mucus production and thus expectoration. That's where it gets the term anti-catarrhal, because it clears out that thick phlegm called catarrh out of the back of the throat or in the bronchioles. It is also used to clear out that thick mucus that can be blocking the fallopian tubes. Thus, it is used for promoting fertility. German chamomile, not to be confused with the common Roman chamomile that is sold in tea bags. German chamomile is a nervine, calming the nerves, antispasmodic, carminative, which means it relaxes the intestines, and is anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, and bitter, meaning it stimulates the movement of the intestines. It is the fresh flowers that contain the volatile oils, which are the most relaxant portion of it. Preparations of the dried flowers are more bitter and can be used to stimulate digestion, but if you want to relax a person, use the fresh flowers. It is also used for a certain kind of irritability a person can have, usually if they're angry or fretful, impossible to please. It is commonly prescribed for children for that behavior, but it also calms adults as well. Lemon balm is also a calming herb used to lower that excessive sympathetic nervous system or charged up adrenal glands. May be regarded as a gentle herbal tranquilizer. It is sometimes used for Graves' disease, as it can lower the levels of thyroid hormone. And it is perhaps most commonly today used as an antiviral against herpes. And there are many topical creams with lemon balm in them which work very, very well. The next herb is catnip, which I know many people think is only for cats, but it works very, very well on humans as well. It's to calm a person, helps relieve spasms, especially felt in the stomach, and it helps when there is pent-up anger and frustration. It helps relieve spasms of the intestines, particularly when they cause a person to flex and bend their knees up. It helps with anxiety attacks felt in the stomach. It also helps promote sweating during colds and flus. Next is rosemary. I think of rosemary to help people improve circulation to their head. It is used when a person doesn't have enough blood getting into their head. It helps thus with the brain. It helps with memory. It's been shown to be helpful with age-related cognitive decline. Just having a single cup of rosemary tea a day can help with that. It also helps when there is hair loss, so another way in which there is not enough blood getting into the head. Next is elder. There is some debate now whether or not the flowers or the berries are the best. I think they're both great. They're commonly used to treat colds and flus. It's been shown that the berries have an antiviral quality. Traditionally, it was more the flowers that were used because traditionally the focus was more upon circulation, and the flowers seem to bring the circulation to the surface, drawing the congestion away from the lungs and the glands in the throat. It is used in that classic cold and flu formula called Gypsy Cold Care, where it is combined with yarrow and peppermint. Next is skullcap. This is one of the main nervine remedies, which simply means it is good for the nerves. It is good to calm a person down, helps prepare people for sleep, but is also good to be used during the day. And it has a long history of use for epilepsy. It can be used to treat any condition associated with exhaustion or depression. Next is milk thistle. This is the great medicine to protect a person's liver if they have toxic damage to the liver. Either they have environmental toxins or they're using a medication which is toxic to the liver. It has been tested to be used simultaneously with many medications, and it does not seem to harmfully interact with them, although there can be some exceptions. Generally, when I'm prescribing it, it is to protect the liver, and so for that reason, I don't prescribe it in an alcohol tincture very often. Goldenrod. I think of this most commonly for allergies. It is good to use when there's phlegm in the upper respiratory tract or if a person has allergies affecting their eyes, and it seems to work especially well when a person has allergies to cats. It can also be used if a person has fatigue or a tired feeling, and it is seen as a tonic to the kidneys. Number 22 is comfrey. This is a tremendous wound healer, and it is also known to repair broken bones. For this, it also gets the name bone knit. It strengthens and rebuilds tissues after an injury. While I have not used it for this, many older herbalists have reported phenomenal success when taken internally for the treatment of both trauma as well as ulcerative conditions of the intestines. It is now known to be quite toxic, can be toxic to the liver, and for this reason most people suggest never taking it internally. However, it is also used in homeopathy, and in homeopathic potencies there is no concern for toxicity. It is one of the main homeopathic remedies to be used when a person has broken bones that are slow to heal. Number 23 is thyme. This is a major cold remedy of Western Europe and is often added to upper respiratory formulas. It stimulates and moves stagnant, stuck mucus. It is useful for cold, inactive conditions where there are tendencies to chill. Thyme has been used as an emmenagogue, meaning used to stimulate menstruation, and for this reason it is not recommended to be used during pregnancy. Next is mullein. One of the things you'll notice about this plant when you inspect the leaves is that they have these fine, soft little hairs on them. And the way this herb was explained to me early on was that those tiny hairs are just like the cilia of your bronchioles, those tiny little hairs that flush out debris from your lungs. And that kind of describes the way it's been historically used. It's used to clear out the lungs, to restore lung function, especially after an infection or after a person has quit smoking, perhaps even during the time when they are smoking. It rebuilds those tissues. It helps as an anti-inflammatory and as an expectorant, clearing out fluids from the lungs. Next is Vitex. This is a hormonal normalizer, especially for women. It is seen to help with the higher regulation of the hormones in the system, regulating the pituitary gland, and is often seen as a progesterone tonic. So if a woman has estrogen dominance, Vitex can be used to build up the progesterone. But you don't have to use it in just that case. It is used in many, many different types of hormonal imbalance. It helps with PMS, and it is also helpful for teenage acne, both in girls and in boys.
Well, that was very quick and I admit a rather superficial look at these herbs. All of the herbs covered here are deep and complex, and there's quite a bit that can be said about them. If you want to keep studying these herbs, I of course recommend that you turn to the books that are in this course, but there is another way too, and that is a process called proving. The idea is simple. You start taking one of those herbs over a period of time, say a week, a month, or even longer. You pick one herb that you want to understand more deeply, and you first start off by taking tiny doses, and then you take a little bit larger doses, and then a little bit larger. You see where you feel it in your body and what the experience of that herb is. I first learned about this process from the author David Hoffman, who recommended that herbalists do this for all of the herbs they're going to use before they would actually prescribe it to any persons. I can't say that I've done that for all the herbs, but I've done it for many. And one of the best herbs to start with is hawthorn, both the flower and the berry. I've got hawthorn right here, just tincture put into hot water to be consumed as a tea. And I've studied this herb in this way, as I've studied many other herbs. It's an interesting way to do it, and it truly is proving the herb on yourself. You understand it in a different way once you've done that. So thanks for watching, and I hope you'll learn more.